It's time for Baby and Toddler Instructions with host Blythe Lipman. Blythe is a nationally renowned infant and toddler expert who has over 30 years' experience helping moms and dads regain their sanity, teaching them how to survive, and giving them the confidence they need to be the best parents ever. From sleeping to crying to potty training to choosing a preschool and so much more. If you're a parent, Baby and Toddler Instructions is the show you've been looking for. Now here's your host, Blythe Lipman.
Well, good morning. Boy, that first sip of coffee tastes really good today. Anyway, good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time zone you may be in. Welcome to Baby and Toddler Instructions. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Or if you're listening to an encore, thank you as well. And sending out big thank yous to everybody. I have almost 200,000 downloads this month. Thank you. Pass it on to your friends. I have such wonderful guests. You know how I love to do my show, but let me tell you about today's show. If you're a dad or if you're a mom, my guest is going to be Christopher Whalen. He's a dad. He's the author of the Foxhole Father, the Field Guide for Fathers. And you don't have to be a dad to listen today because moms, sometimes little pointers can help. But dads and moms are both great. Maybe you don't do it all the same way, but you all do it and you love your kids. So Christopher will be with us in just a bit. I want to tell you a little bit about my guest. And if you have any questions, comments, want to just say good morning, you know how I love callers. You can call us at 877-864-4869, or you can go to the chat line on toginet.com. It says chat. You sign in, and you can type your question. But don't be chicken. Call us. Love to talk to you. Anyway, Christopher R. Whalen is a national speaker on parenting and family financial issues. He's available to speak for any of your groups. His 3 children are now adults and flourishing in all areas of their lives. He's also a CPA, owns and manages his own firm. He specializes in family financial matters. His volunteer work includes mentoring fathers, prisoner reentry programs, and mentoring at-risk youth. He lives in New Jersey, where I know it is absolutely freezing because my mother lives there. Anyway, Christopher has done so many things, and this book, I have to tell you, this book, I can't put it down. It's wonderful. It has so much information. It's called Foxhole Father, the Field Guide for Fathers, and the cover is adorable. If you saw my video, you could see the cover. So we're going to break for a commercial in just a bit, but let's say good morning. Hi, Chris. How are you? Thanks so much for being on the show this morning.
Good morning, Blythe, and thank you to all your listeners and downloaders. And yes, it is very cold here in New Jersey.
Is there any snow?
Not in my area, but if it was a little wet out there, it would be it's under freezing right now. So, but no snow yet here.
Oh, well, good. I don't want to hear about any snow. It's too early. The Christmas decorations are too early. If you ask me, that's just my opinion. It does look pretty, but you know what? By January 1st, we're going to all be tired of hearing the Christmas music, which is in all the stores. But we're going to break for commercial in just a bit, and this show is not about Christmas music, decorations, or the weather. We're going to be talking about dads when we come back. My wonderful guest, Christopher Whalen, the Foxhole Father, the author of Foxhole Father. Be right back.
Welcome back to Baby and Toddler Instructions with Blythe Lipman on TogiNet. The hour for all moms with little ones to come for great advice, encouragement, and great ideas for all new parents. Now, back to the show with Blythe Lipman.
Well, welcome back to Baby and Toddler Instructions. I have my wonderful guest here today. His name is Christopher R. Whalen. He is the author of the Foxhole Father, the Field Guide for Fathers. Love his book, but I do have to mention one other thing. During the commercial break, I took a look at the statistics, and wow, thank you to the 232,780 listeners. Yay, pass it on. You can never get too much information about how to raise your children. Sorry, I had to toot my own horn for like a second. Okay, I'm done. Let's do Christopher's. Christopher, thanks for being on the show. So how did this start? I mean, it's scary to be a dad. It's scary to be a single dad. There are no instructions.
Oh, absolutely not. And I before my first daughter was born, I had never held a baby or changed a baby, so from the first moment she was born, I was completely all thumbs and insecure about anything to do with parenting. And So yes, I agree. There's no instructions, and you just find your way. And part of the premise of my book is that you can be a man and be masculine and use your innate sense of parenting and take care of a child. It's okay.
You know what? It is okay. And whether you're a dad, whether you're a mom, it's in your heart. And while I have hundreds of tips to help parents, bottom line is it's in your heart. And whatever you try when you love your little one, if it doesn't work, so what if you put the diaper on backwards? You put it on frontwards the next time. I mean, it's all about learning for all of us.
No, I agree 100%. And a lot of men are insecure, and I don't know where that exactly comes from, but I'm just trying to empower them to be involved, be physically involved as much as possible. Your children need you to be physically involved and emotionally involved, and you really can't make too much of a mistake. Be immersed in it and have confidence that you'll find your way.
You know what? And you do. I don't know if you were online when I was talking about this article in the New York Times with the Fathers Network.
Yes.
Were you ever part of that?
No, but I've read a lot about it. I know a lot about it.
I mean, I think it's great because you know what? Moms, we go out, we get together. There's girlfriend time. You hear about guys going for sports, but, which father would ever say, yeah, I've got a great recipe for spaghetti squash? I mean, but it's okay because you have to feed your children and you want to feed them something good. Anyway, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That brings us to, next week, Thanksgiving week. It's the holidays are a great time to put down the electronic devices, and especially the day before. I was always, when my children were little, doing everything I can with baking and cooking for the holiday. Don't be insecure I don't have any baking skills myself. Find a simple recipe, buy a cake, do some cookies. It's one of the greatest bonding times I've had with my kids, with some music playing in the kitchen. Something very simple, just to be together, focus on each other, and tune out all of the electronics just for a couple of hours. It's a really good time to do that.
You know what? That's terrific information. And I have to say, I do love to bake. However, there's nothing wrong with a box of cookie, making it from a box, cookies, brownies. It doesn't matter. It's the idea of being together, which is what you're saying. And the memories, it's funny because my children are in their 30s and they come back and they'll go, remember when? And there's nothing better because you laugh, and it's so important. And I'm glad you brought that up. Also, by the way, if anybody has a question for Chris or me, or you want to talk, the number here again is 877-864-4869. Don't be shy. So I'm looking at your book that has pages turned down and little pieces of paper in it because there's so many wonderful things in here. The beginning of the book says your Foxhole Father mission to raise your children to become fully functioning, self-aware, self-respecting, self-sufficient, and independent adults. Isn't that's so true? So how did you come up with the Foxhole Father mission?
Well, what happened with me is in 1997, my marriage dissolved. And I suddenly was left with taking care of my children 50% of the time. I'm an entrepreneur. I really had the traditional, I had a wife at home, a great mother at home with my children, and I suddenly was thrust into being physically with them half the time. And I of course, I had never done anything like that, and I really felt like I was in this foxhole environment. I think a lot of single dads get this very claustrophobic, scared feeling. And so that's really what the foxhole means to me, is that's where I was suddenly thrust into. And finally, eventually now coming out of it, writing this book, I was in the foxhole for a long time. And a lot of moms and dads are reacting in a positive way to that. When you read in the beginning of my book, you'll read my story, and it really explains exactly where I was emotionally when the marriage broke up, and where I was when having to have my children half the time. So it's really an emotional mindset of where I was thrust into this divorce situation, where something I don't think I was really prepared for at all.
I appreciate you sharing that, because so many times when there is a breakup of a relationship, a marriage, a lot of it's focused on the women, and nobody, many times people don't say to the father, are you okay? We always say it to the mother, are you okay? But you know what? We all go through our own emotional struggles too, and with children, where do you start and when do you tell them and what do you say? Like, I love your book because you have your QAG, Quick Action Guide. And whether you're a mom or a dad, quick action is great. I want to talk a little bit to you about this. Like in the beginning, you say how to talk to your children.
Right.
And I think it's great. What do you think the number one tip is, no matter how old the kids are, whether they're toddlers? Of course, babies don't understand, but you still need to sing to them. Or what do you think the number one tip is for talking to your children? Let's talk about a toddler.
A toddler. Well, always try to feel that you are the toddler you're talking to, and you always want to come across in a non-judgmental, caring but strong way. And usually a lot of conversation or words or interaction is tempered with a heightened emotional sense, especially when there's stress. So we never want to include that in any interaction with the children. We want to be strong and we want to give them direction based on what's best for them. So, for example, I've never told my children that they disappoint me or what they're doing is bad for me. It has nothing to do with me. It's always focused on, oh, Timmy, I don't want you spraying the hose when we have company in the backyard because it's really not good behavior to have for you. So it's just to take a step back and self-observe, especially when there's stressful situations, and just take a moment and really focus on being a deliberately communicating parent to this beautiful life you're trying to nurture.
You know what? I love it because reading your book, you'll hear parents yell to their kids. And one of my tips today was to get down to your toddler's level. And it's just so important because you can't yell, put the hose down, like you say in your book. You have to be there. You have to be present for your child, no matter how old. Well, we have Peter on the line. So let's say good morning to him. Peter,
good morning, Peter.
Good morning. How are you? Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Do you have a question or a comment? Thanks for calling.
Oh yeah, no, just a comment. I attended the function for the book Foxhole Father last week, being a single father myself, and so the book signing event was very fun. But so I got a copy of the book, and about halfway through it or so, and I've been finding it very helpful.
Wow, well, I'm happy to hear that, and I know Chris is happy to hear it because it is helpful. I don't care if you're a dad or mom. I think everybody should read this book because it's wonderful. There's so many great tips, and I'm happy you went to his book signing. It was a little far for me to go, or I would have been there. But I'm so happy you called.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Yes, so like I said, I didn't read the whole book yet, but it's very specific things which I like. It's not just a generalization. I mean, there's what to do having a sleepover party. And for example, I really like the suggestions of, you really got to get to know the parents of your kids' friends and, know who they're with. I think too many parents today, just let their kids do whatever they want. And, so far the tone of the book that I got, the biggest message I got so far is you got to be very heavily involved in your kids' lives if you want to do a good job.
Christopher, is that the message you're getting out?
I agree, and your kids can only benefit from your involvement. Parents need to have fathers need to have the confidence to be as immersed as they can. Your children need you so much on every level every day. I agree, Peter. Thank you.
Peter, thanks so much for calling in, and you have a great holiday.
Oh, you too. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was a nice call.
That was the nicest call because it's so true. I mean, in our age of technology, I have all my electronics sitting in my office. I was joking with Casey, the producer. Thank you, Casey, because my internet kept going out. And I'm thinking if the internet goes out, I'm going to do the show on the phone or I'm going to do it on my laptop. Anyway, it was really funny because I thought, I have all this stuff that 10 years ago we wouldn't have had. And the important message here is you do need to be there for your children. And that's what your book says. And it is very specific. We are going to have a commercial break. And when we come back, we are going to talk about newborns and teenagers and play dates and cleaning your room. We have so much to talk about. I don't know where to start. So again, Peter, thank you again for calling. The number here is 877-864-4869. And don't forget to listen to all our other great shows on TogiNet. When I walk, I put my headphones in and I listen to a podcast. Makes my walk faster and I get some great information. So we will be right back.
Welcome back to Baby and Toddler Instructions with Blythe Lipman on TogiNet, the hour for all moms with little ones to come for great advice, encouragement, and great ideas for all new parents. Now, back to the show with Blythe Lipman.
Well, welcome back to Baby and Toddler Instructions. I'm so happy you could tune in, whether it's live or you're listening to a podcast. I have such a wonderful guest today. His name is Christopher R. Whalen. He is the author of Foxhole Father. It's a field guide for fathers, and he was explaining how sometimes dads feel like they're in a foxhole and they're alone. And if you heard the beginning about the Father's Network, I mean, you need to network too, just like we do. So, Chris, thanks for being on the show again. Let's talk about play dates because the holidays are coming and parents are going to be busy making food for Thanksgiving and getting ready for the other holidays. And sometimes, you know, you have a play date because it makes it easier to entertain your children to have some friends. Is there a number one tip? I remember screaming and yelling and anyway.
What about play dates?
With play dates, I have a chapter in my book, How to Do Play Dates, but I want to hear a dad's take on it.
Well, when I became a single dad, my oldest was 6 years old. My youngest was about 3 or 4. So there was a lot of play dates that were happening with new friends, with new schools, and a lot of dads just don't feel secure to discuss these kind of things. When my children are my greatest treasure, and I had to meet both parents usually before my kids could go to a home, number one. I'm looking for parenting compatibility, which I think is more important than romantic compatibility sometimes. And also, I know that may sound funny, but it's true. And,
no, I agree.
And also, I wanted to, I always went to the first play date or had a parent come over if I was hosting the first one. And if I got any friction with that, then I probably did not allow the play date to happen. So all parents, even there's moms I talk to who feel that they're going to be out of place or it's going to be odd to ask certain questions. Like in my book, I say, do you have a pool? Do you have guns in your house? Is your backyard fenced in? How old are your other children there? This is a whole new environment, and I mean, just like you wouldn't let your kids run into the woods. Well, the home is something that is strange to you and your child, and I need to make sure that it meets what I feel to be the proper level or condition for my kids to interact there.
That's such important information. I'll tell you an interesting story. When we first moved to Arizona, the Wild West, my son was going into 6th grade, and there was going to be a play date, and we were going to have it at my house. And the mother said to me, do you have guns? And I almost fell on the floor because what did I know from guns? We didn't have guns. And unfortunately, it's a fact of life in many places, and that's just my opinion. But I said, no, we have water pistols, but, we don't have guns, and we just moved here. And, in hindsight, I thought that's such a good question to ask because, unfortunately, it is a fact of life in many homes, and you want to make sure they're locked up. And I love that you go with them to the play date. It's like preschool. If you can't drop in, then go find another preschool.
All right, and the planning for this, the important part of this is I wanted to dictate who my kids were friends with. This is what this is about. If I don't feel that parents are going to have my same level of parenting and we're not compatible, I don't want my children interacting with those children because they're probably not compatible. So it allows you to really dictate who your kids and the quality of children your children are friends with, and that's priceless.
It is priceless because what do you do if you don't mesh? And how do they discipline? Is it okay for another parent to discipline your child or vice versa? There are a lot of things that go into play dates besides toys. I want to say,
imagine how confusing it could be for a 7-year-old to go into a different parenting environment that really is very different from yours, and that's why there's screening questions. I want to have I want to almost have, I want to have a pre-meeting and talk to the parents. I did this many, many, many times since 1997, more times than I could even imagine. And there were many, many times where I moved my kids away from interacting with families because I didn't think that they met my standard of parenting and how they run their home.
You know what? That's priceless information, honestly, because don't be embarrassed. If you don't like the home that they're going to go play in, it's okay to say it's not a mix because, not everything works out. So also, you were talking about parenting from a distance. What exactly is parenting from a distance?
Parenting from a distance is so common today. And just a quick example, we've all seen it. We're at a barbecue. You have a father on a hammock with maybe his third beer in his hand, and his son or daughter is doing something across the yard that they don't like. And, of course, they say, please stop, and they keep escalating and escalating. And we never parent from a distance, especially in public. We need to go and discuss with the child what they're doing and why it's wrong, why it's bad for them socially. Again, it's never bad for the parent, whatever the children are doing. I know this sounds controversial, but if you read my book, you'll understand the mentality. So we never want to make a scene or add to the scene or disturbance with our children. So in this case, we need to go approach the child in quiet and discuss with the child. If we have to restrain the child, that's happened. I've had to hold my children and force timeouts when they're little if they keep grabbing the hose, for example. But parenting from a distance disrespects your child. It makes them a spectacle. We never want to do that. I never want to have my parenting be part of a social situation. I don't think it respects the children or myself or my family. I want to discuss it with them, and so that's what parenting from a distance is, and I think it should be avoided.
I think you're so right, and it reminds me when you were talking about when you're in the grocery store, and I have an article on my website. Toddlers don't know not to say something, and they may say something mean about somebody in front of them or throw or whatever, and that's another thing. You leave. Like I'll tell parents, I'll say, what do I do when my toddler acts up in the grocery store? I'll give them 3 or 4 tips, but I'll say, last thing, leave. You know what? Don't try reasoning and don't try talking. Leave the premises. So you can't parent from a distance. And you have to be in charge, which is what you're saying, too. You're the boss. I mean, you're teaching your children what's right and what's wrong, and you have to be the boss, and it doesn't matter what the other people think.
And remember, and the overriding reason for all parenting should be, how am I guiding the child to be successful later in life? A lot of parents internalize and take things personally. So when you see a parent screaming at a 4-year-old, that's never okay. One, because you're out of control emotionally. A 4-year-old should never be able to get you to that place. We need to parent the child for the best interest of the child. So a child can't get me emotionally upset. That's crazy to think of just like I say in my book, a crying baby in a crib at 2 months old shouldn't get you upset. And a 14-year-old who's interacting with you, although they seem to use adult words, it should be the same level of emotional distance from that for you. It should flow around you. You need to parent the child and nurture them, and your emotional system should not be involved. It just gets in the way of effective parenting.
So you talk a little bit about turning friction and drama into teaching moments, and we're talking a little bit about drama right here. Don't you think they're all teaching moments?
I think they can be, but sometimes the lessons are bad. When a lot of times people are trying to, situations will come and go, and all day with children, with family. You're going to have friction. You're going to have drama. So assuming that, I try to lay out a framework within my household of how we interact, how we're supposed to interact with each other with respect and love. And so when I saw things escalate, so a good example is between two of my daughters are 11 months apart. When I saw them escalate and getting into something, and the topic really is none of my business, to be honest with you. It is my concern, but none of my business. But I would stop them, not to discuss or try to change their opinions about what their argument was. I would try to take it and show them, hey, this is not how you should accept being spoken to. That's about teaching, turning drama into teaching moments. That's very significant. Is that, okay, I wanted my children to have a baseline of what's acceptable in their space. So if they were yelling at each other, it's not acceptable, for example. So that's part of when take a step back. When something's happening dramatic or stressful within your family, if the interaction is negative and how they're interacting, separate from the topic, take a step back, take a time out, and discuss that interaction. Hey, I love passionate topics and discussing them. So that's what you want to do with them from a young age. Hey, this is how we discuss passionate things with respect with each other, and then come back to the topic and try to use those tools you just try to instill in them. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense, and keep it age appropriate. I mean, don't have a half-hour discussion with your 3-year-old, because after the first 3 or 4 words, they don't care. When you're correcting them, keep it age appropriate. Of course, when they get older, it's really fun as they get older because the conversations get longer and you have more time to teach more things. But I like the idea that you step back, and it's okay. I always used to tell parents, and I still do, is count to 3. Take a breath and count to 3. And take a look at what's really going on. And if you're into the drama yourself, as Chris says, you should never let a child get you into that emotional place. It's okay for you to take a time out. Whether it's with the baby and the baby won't stop crying, it's okay to put the baby in his or her crib and just take a few minutes to take that breather. If it's a toddler, you can sit them down and give them a book or something just so you can take the breather, because two people that are into the drama doesn't get anywhere. And it's really tough to deal with. I always think of the babies. I don't know if you remember if your kids were babies, but when they get past that point in their cribs and they're going, forget it. It's too far. When they're crying, they need something. When toddlers are having tantrums, they need something so to step back. When they get to be teenagers, they still need something. Their needs just change, and they need it from you because the acting out comes from needing something from a parent.
The acting out, the reason why it's bad on both sides. Number one, your children see you as their gauge of what's normal and acceptable. So there's two things that are bad. Number one, I don't want my children to believe that they can act out during their lives. So when they're 3 years old acting out, my feeling should be when they're 40, I'm going to try to teach them that this is not acceptable, because there's a lot of entitled 40-year-olds having tantrums out there.
Oh, I know.
And also, I'm an adult saying I love you. This is very important. I love my children. I love you. But yet, if I come at them in a combative way, well, they see that as normal, and they'll find that acceptable later in life. I have a chapter about hitting your children. If you hit your children, it's a behavior they see as normal. Like, someone can say they love you, but they can also strike you in the next minute.
You know what? I have to stop you here, Chris, because the producer's going to have a tantrum if we don't go to commercial. So we will be right back.
Well,
he really won't. We'll be right back.
We'll be right back with more Help My Baby Came Without Instructions. It's Baby and Toddler Instructions with Blythe Lipman on TogiNet. We'll be right back right after these. Welcome back to Baby and Toddler Instructions with Blythe Lipman on TogiNet. The hour for all moms with little ones to come for great advice, encouragement, and great ideas for all new parents. Now, back to the show with Blythe Lipman.
I like that one.
Yeah. Well, welcome back. I cannot believe we are up to the last segment. I'm here with Christopher R. Whalen, the author of Foxhole Father, the field guide for fathers, and we are having so much fun and such great information. Let's talk a second about cleaning your room. How do you get your kids to clean your room, no matter what age? I mean, toddlers love to help, but they don't really understand the concept.
Well, the most important thing to remember is, what does a clean room mean? Is it really that important? Are they functioning? A lot of parents have this blanket rule of wanting a room in a certain way. I've never told my children to clean their room. If their clothes are clean and unwrinkled, if they can function and they're disorganized or cluttered, if you will, that's fine with me. I wanted to respect them. So everyone's different. Look at people you work with. Look at the different desks you see. I would tell all of them to clean their cubicles then. So this is a very important concept that people have these blanket thoughts, these knee-jerk reactions about parenting. A room should be clean, a bed should be made, everything should be dusted, everything in its place like an IKEA catalog. But really take a step back and see, is this functionally hurting my child, the state of their room? And if you can say honestly no, well then let it be. And that's very controversial, but it's true. Everyone's different. Respect them. Does that make any sense?
You know what? It makes a lot of sense, because when my kids got older, I used to tell them, I used to close the door. I mean, it was such an argument with getting them to clean their room, because I'm really organized, I'm really neat. And, you know, when you're in the midst of being the parent, you want them sometimes, as you say, to do it the same way that you like the IKEA catalog. And so we got to a point where you need to pick up your clothes, but close your door. And once a week, you need to clean up your room the way I want you to clean it up. But, you know, they were busy and they were in school. And, you know, it's tough. So that's really good information, because it is different. And it can't be the IKEA catalog every day.
Right. Are they functioning? I mean, one of my daughters, I had some daughters that were very neat. They had everything in drawers. I had some daughters that had clean clothes, but they had a basket. And as long as they're, for them, I want their clothes to be unwrinkled and clean. So if they're going out in the world and being successful, and then a clean room really is a waste of their time. They found a way to be successful and not waste the time putting everything in its place. I respect that. That's what I want. Is it negatively impact? That's always the question. Is it negatively impacting the child to do X or to have X? Really? Not just because of my knee-jerk filter, which a lot of times is wrong. My knee-jerk filters, believe me, I was raised in a very sexist environment where I was supposed to be shoveling snow or painting a house, never held the baby or touched the baby. So a lot of times my knee-jerk reactions had to be filtered and tempered through, wait a second, let me back up here. And that was one of the main ones I thought of. And it made my relationship with them so much better, because they felt respected and they didn't have to hide their room from me.
No, you know what? And it's funny, because I'm thinking about women and what moms would say. Well, if I don't teach you now, you're going to have a dirty house when you grow up. I think there's a meeting in the middle. And you're right, because going out and doing the activities are important, and there has to be something that works for everybody, but you're still the boss. I have to say, you're still the boss. So, Mr. Bossman, what about bedtime when they won't go to bed? Any tips for that?
Well, I think part of it is we need to make sure that our kids are regularly exercised. We do more to exercise our pets to make sure that they are calm.
So true.
I think that's number one. I think that especially small boys, unfortunately today we have young boys that are of course excited. They don't need to be put on Ritalin. They need to be taken care of, and they need an outlet. So number one, bedtimes is we have to maintain that. We have to enforce it, and that's just because I said so, and that's just the way it goes. It's for their best interest to get the most amount of sleep they can for school the next day. If it's not a school day the next day, of course, I relax that. But there are some things that they just can't understand, and I can't speak for hours about. But you have to go to bed at 9 o'clock, and everything's turned off, and it's just because I said so.
That's funny, because that was what went on years ago, and I think it worked, because I'm your mother, because I'm your father, and I said so. And it doesn't happen so much anymore today. We give explanations, and we bargain, and we do all kinds of things. You know what? You're still the parent, and you're still trying to teach your children the right ideals and teach them so they become a responsible adult, as you say in your book. Also, we were talking during the break a little bit. What about, fathers go through losses when they get a divorce. And if you end up being a single dad, again, nobody really says you okay like they do to a mom. Talk a little bit about those emotions, because it is a loss.
Well, what happens, I find, and I've done a lot of divorce work in my CPA practice, dealt with a lot of families, and so I really can speak to this, personally from a lot of interaction with men, is that if you have children, and a lot of times a man's place is replaced in a woman's heart in a big way with her children, as it should be. And usually a man marries a woman, wants to be with her to make her dreams come true. His thoughts of having a child usually sometimes stems from wanting to fulfill her dream of being a mother. So, and that sometimes doesn't go away after many years. A man still wants to feel the appreciation and love from a woman and that goes beyond sometimes his love for his children. So I just want people to realize that, let's say a divorce happens, that a man is going through so much. He could lose his home. He could lose time with his children. And he could also lose this very important part of his definition. He wants this woman to be happy. He wants to make her dreams come true. So oftentimes, what I've seen in my career is sometimes men have a deeper emotional hurt and loss, and then, of course, they don't talk about it as much. So I just want people to try to realize that sometimes single dads do have as much of a deep emotional loss, and sometimes in a greater way. I know it sounds controversial because women sometimes don't want to hear that a man has feelings at all, but I've seen men have much worse emotional situations to get over due to this feeling that their definition is ruined. They have their children, and that's great, but as a man, their definition is entwined with this woman they love and have tried to take care of. Did I explain that okay?
So do you think men like it when somebody says to them, are you okay? What's it feel like? You had a great loss too, or do you think it makes them not masculine to talk about it?
Well, yes, of course. Men have this. They get it from all sides in a negative way. They're supposed to be stoic, but then they're also told, well, you don't express yourself enough. So it's very confusing. What's the definition of a man? If you read in my book, that whole men need to completely ignore any socialized definition of manhood or masculinity. Completely, it's completely bastardized. So a masculine man, the definition of my book is. Masculine men are deep, they're focused, they're emotional, they're attached, they're intimate people. A masculine man is. It's not this misogynistic, crazy, boys gone wild vision you have in the press today. So, yes, men need to be able to be open to seeking help also. I say it in my book. I have a Foxhole single father section, a very large section at the end of the book. And men need to know there's no loss of masculinity to have an emotional depth and have a problem. And I say in my book, one of the first things to do, even if you feel you're okay, is seek out counseling and therapy to discuss this new phase of your life and your children's lives. Go and speak to someone about what does this mean for your children? How is this impacting me in ways that I don't know? I did that. One of the first things I did. I sought a child psychologist for me to talk to and a therapist for me. And I encourage all men to do that because that gives us a place of understanding. It gives us a safe place to cry, which I did many times. And it just gave me a real springboard to have the rest of the week to be introspective and not feel so alone. So therapy is such a good thing, especially when we go through a situation where we have a breakup like this.
Chris, I love that you're so honest and open because you know what? People don't give men the credit when something happens that's so hurtful. So thank you. We are at the end of the show. I can't believe it. You know what? You have to come back on because there's a lot more to talk about. Being a single dad, being a father, divorce, everything. You know what? I thank you for sharing and thank you for opening your heart and being honest. It's so important. So to the dads listening out there and the moms, this is a great book, Foxhole Father, the Field Guide for Fathers. Christmas is coming, holidays are coming, great Father's Day gift. I think you all need to go buy this book. It's wonderful. I will put all Chris's information on my website, mybestparentingadvice.com and babyinstructions.com, and how you can get a hold of him. And, he's a great speaker if you want him for one of your events. So, Christopher, thank you so much. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you, Blythe, so much. Have a good day.
Take care. Bye-bye. Boy, what a great guest and such a wonderful show. There's so many answers, for dads and questions that you just don't ask. So I am indebted to Christopher Whalen for answering them and being so open and honest. Next Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, I will be having another wonderful guest, and it's not a minute too soon before the holidays because baby and toddler sleep schedules sometimes go out the window. So my guest, Tracy Spackman, the Gentle Sleep Coach, is going to be on the show, and she's going to be talking about 6 of her favorite secrets to get your babies to sleep or your toddlers to sleep. And if you have questions, go to babyinstructions@cox.net or my websites and email me your questions. Also, you can always call during the show. In between, take a little rest while you're getting your turkey ready. And don't forget to go to my Facebook page, my Twitter. I'm on Pinterest. I have pictures. I have tips. I just added some new favorite tips, and I'm going to be putting an article on this week. So check out mybestparentingadvice.com. Call my office if you need some coaching. The number's on my website. And today I'd like to leave you with these words of wisdom, or like I want to call them, dadisms. As Matthew Jacobson said, behind every young child who believed in himself is a parent who believed first. And finally, from Lou Brock, when I was a kid, I used to imagine animals running under my bed. I told my dad, and he quickly solved the problem. He cut the legs off the bed. Love that one. Anyway, dads are so great, as are moms, and will always remain, in our hearts and make you smile no matter where they are, how old you are. Special. Dads are special. So thanks for tuning in. Have a great rest of the week. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.